Okay, the severity of adultery. So you may be asking yourself and saying, well, what's the big deal? I've been married now 20, 30, maybe 5 to 7 years, and I haven't remarried, and I'm strong in the Lord. Well, there are severities to adultery, and there's different levels to adultery. And so this is what Matthew 5 is going to explain in verses 27 to 30. Now, if you do have any other questions about adultery and divorce, please visit my other videos like dealing with divorce as a Christian and the blessings of a good Christian marriage. So let's jump straight into this. So it says in verse 27, "Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not commit adultery." Now I want to stop right there because that's a pretty bold statement. It says, "Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time." Now you know that adultery, or rather divorce, was mentioned in Deuteronomy. And if you look in Deuteronomy, which is the Old Testament, it's pretty much in the beginning of the Bible. So what is Jesus trying to say here? What old time is he talking about? Where it says, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." He's talking about the very foundation of the world. Before God even created the world, he was saying, well, this was the foundation. This is how it's going to be when I create this helpmeet for my servant, for Adam. Where he said, where he laid Adam to asleep and took the bone from his side. And when he woke up, he saw a woman was created. And he said, "This is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. I will call it a woman." Now, we all know this is just describing the power of the word of God. That although Moses may have said something, this foundation of adultery was even before Moses even came into the world. All right, before the people even had a problem with their wives. This is how strong of an emphasis is placed on adultery and a good Christian marriage. So let's continue. "But I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her committeth adultery with her already in his heart." So that's where a lot of people have their downfall, because they never look at what's happening in their heart. You may get into an argument with your wife, your husband, and for that split instance, you're thinking about that friend that's at work, you're thinking about that coworker, you're thinking about, that person that just, spoke to you very kindly, and immediately adultery hits. And when sin happens, when lust happens, then comes sin, and when sin, when it is finished, creates death. So what you may see as not a big deal is actually a very big deal, because it starts out as something small, and then soon enough you're comparing your husband to this person that you barely know yourself, and and then there's more conflict happening into your marriage. So this is why we oftentimes have to look within our hearts, and this is why we have to chasten our bodies through fastings and through prayer, and allow the Spirit to shine through our mortal bodies, because we all know that we are separated from spirit and flesh, and the flesh wars against the spirit and the spirit against the flesh, and they don't agree in one on certain things. So, on basically everything. And so Jesus describes that if this happens in your life, that you should stop before it gets any worse, because in 29 it says, "And if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not thy whole body should be cast into hell." And not thy whole body should be cast into hell. "And if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell." So Jesus is saying here, you cannot enter in if adultery is found in you. He doesn't look at the fact that you've been married 50 or 70 or a long time. He doesn't care about that. Well, it does matter, but he doesn't care if you've been married and you've also been cheating within your heart this whole time. If every time you get angry, you're thinking about another woman, you're thinking about another man. He says, if you cannot go ahead and do this, if you can't brittle your whole body, he's like, well, he says to go to the extent of even taking out your right eye and then casting it from thee, because he's trying to save your soul. He says, I'd rather you have this member perish than have your whole body to perish. It's not about, oh, well, I'm just complimenting her, she's a beautiful lady, or he's a handsome man. No, God is saying, listen, you do what is right by me. If you call me, your father, do the will of your father. So, and then he also says in terms of the right hand, if the right hand offend thee, cut it off and cast it from thee. If you're going ahead and you want to be flirting with people and you can't restrain yourself from doing that, then he says go to the lengths of cutting it off. Because he's trying to say that if you cannot brittle, if you can't control your body through the spirit of his love, then you got to use fleshly means in order to contain or to restrain yourself. So I hope you guys really start seeing the severity of the matter of adultery. And stay tuned for the next series where it talks about the marriage that we have with God.